All right, thank you everybody. Welcome to JavaOne. I'm Kevin Rushforth and I'll be talking about what's new and exciting in JavaFX. So the main things I want to cover today, I'm going to do a very quick JavaFX overview. I'm going to assume most of you know at least something about JavaFX. So I included the slides in there. I'll go through it fairly quickly for those who haven't seen it, but you'll want to go back and just look at the slides on the overview. I'll spend a fair bit of time on our JavaFX releases, particularly JavaFX 24, and then show a demo of our new RichTextArea control, and then talk a little bit about what else we've got going on, and hopefully leave about 5 minutes or a little more maybe for questions. All right, so for those who do know this, you can tune out now. For those who don't, JavaFX is a UI toolkit. It's cross-platform. So we provide binaries on the 3 major desktop platforms, and in partnership with Gluon, they provide binaries for 2 mobile platforms, Android and iOS, and also for embedded devices like Raspberry Pi. JavaFX is developed underneath OpenJDK, and as you know, OpenJDK has moved all of our source code to GitHub, and so you can use the workflow that you are familiar with if you would like to contribute. And we do accept contributions, and we have contributing guidelines that you can go read if you're interested in doing that. JavaFX is a rich UI toolkit. It's got a complete set of UI controls, and now we have a prototype, or not actually a prototype, it's a preview feature of RichTextArea control. We also have various graphics and animation layouts that you can use, and we support web and media integration with your JavaFX app, and we interoperate with Swing. So real quick thing on building and running your JavaFX application. It's not bundled with the JDK, but you download it separately, although we distribute it as a bunch of JMods that you can JLink, and so that it then is included with the JDK that you will use to develop and distribute your application. And in fact, that's what I'll be showing today. Everything I'm running on today is built with JDK 24 and a J-linked JavaFX 24 inside of it. And then to use J-link, you just download the JMods from jdk.java.net and run the J-link command to produce a custom JDK. You can either produce just the JDK, and now you have the same thing that you downloaded, only now it has the JavaFX modules, or you can link in your JavaFX application. And then use JPackage to create a distributable application. What that will do is create native installers or packages for Windows, Linux, or Mac. Okay, now I'd like to spend some time talking about the various JavaFX releases. We use the same 6-month cadence that the JDK does. So all the benefits that Mark Reinhold told you about and George Saab told you about today in the keynote address, we also reap those benefits for JavaFX. And that's that we have a very predictable schedule. So every 6 months, like clockwork, we release a new version of JavaFX. We use the same versioning number scheme because we want to underscore the fact that we intend JavaFX version N to run with JDK version N. And in particular, the JavaFX 24 that was released earlier this morning is developed with the intention that you will download it and JDK 24 and run them together. We will test and make sure that it runs on JavaFX N-1, and we do that because our development's decoupled, and there's no way we could even do our early access effectively without that. And so we will test it on Java 23, which we have. But anything older than that, if it happens to run, it's nice, but we don't test it, so we don't recommend it. Our release model is a train model, just like the JDK. So the features get in when they get in. So I can't tell you what's going to be in Java 25, although I'll show you a list of things we're working on. They will catch the next train, and so when they get released, if they're there in time, then they'll make that version of JDK. So since a year ago, we've released 2 versions of JavaFX, one in September of last year, and that's Java 23 and JavaFX 23. We had several features, enhancements, and bug fixes. And some of the more notable ones I've listed here, and I'll particularly highlight the first one, CSS Transitions. But I'd also like to draw your attention to a few other things. For those of you who run on Linux, the Wayland display server has become the default on every distro. And in fact, some distros going forward are very quickly going to stop shipping the Xorg display server. And so we've made sure in Java 23, JavaFX 23, to provide full support for Wayland display servers. This is running using X-Wayland compatibility mode, which is the same thing the JDK currently does with Java 2D and AWT. We also added a few media features and a couple of other interesting features like optimized performance of CSS selectors, and keyboard scrolling and virtualized controls is something that's basically been missing for a while. So we could, it's a sort of an accessibility feature. It allows you to do something that you haven't been able to do and is an obvious thing to do. And so for CSS Transitions, this is the one I wanted to highlight a little bit. We support through CSS the ability to define pseudostates so that you can define what your appearance of your control or widget is normally. You can define a different appearance when you hover your mouse over it. And prior to JDK 23, all that would happen is when you move your mouse in, it would immediately jump from the default state to the hovered state with no smooth animation. CSS has long supported the idea of CSS animations. We use the standard one, so if you're familiar and have done any web programming, you can take exactly those CSS animations and apply them to FX. So this is an example of an implicit transition that we define in our style sheet for what in this case is a rectangle. Normally you'd do it on a UI control, but I just wanted to illustrate this. And so everything that's in white is something that you could have done before and would have defined. So we're defining a rectangle with a particular size and color in its default state, and a different size larger and a different color going from red to green. And prior to today, it would just immediately become twice as large and green. And now what happens is we're going to animate the width over a period of 2 seconds, and we're going to animate the height and color over a period of 4 seconds. And so I'll run the demo now. And it does both ways. It will reverse the same thing when you go out. So that's available today. But what I want to specify, or I'm sorry, I want to talk about most is what we just released today. JavaFX 24 went GA this morning along with JDK 24. We released a number of features and enhancements. This release, we focused more on those two things, and we still managed to get in quite a few bug fixes. But you'll notice a relatively longer list of features and enhancements. I'm not going to talk about all of these, but I at least want to mention most of them. So I'll spend a fair bit of time later talking about RichTextArea and input map a little bit. We've had a long time desire to do a rich text control. This is a very large feature, and so we've released it as an incubator feature. So that means we can evolve the API, and again, I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We've got pluggable image loading that's now available and automatic that uses Java 2D's image.io APIs. And we've added the support that you saw for CSS interpolators to several more components. And then we provided a few other things. Focused traversal API for custom controls. This is a very simple one, but it's an important one if you need to do a custom control. And then a few CSS things and some additional platform preferences. So pluggable image.io loading, one of the big limitations of JavaFX's image loading is we don't support all of the same file formats that the JDK supports. And what's more, if there's one that's not one of the ones that we support or is supported by default in Java 2D, you can't even write your own. So what applications have had to do up until now is code manually, actually using the image.io APIs in their application, copying it into a buffered image, and then using a utility that we provide that will take that buffered image and make yet another copy of it into a JavaFX image. And then once you've done that, you can now put that in your scene graph. Well, that's great. It's not too much code. You could probably encapsulate it if you wanted, but then what if you wanted to use that with CSS or with an FXML file? You're kind of stuck. You have to basically pre-process this image, and it becomes really hard to do something like that on the fly. And so with JavaFX 24, you can just use the standard JavaFX image APIs. So you just basically say, create an image, here's the URL. It can be a file URL or a HTTPS URL. And if it's not one of the formats that JavaFX already supports, we will check, can image.io be loaded and supported? And if it does, it just works seamlessly and automatically. And as I mentioned earlier about CSS loading, this really, CSS Transitions, this really completes the story that we started in JavaFX 23, in that we can now apply interpolation to a much wider set of objects. We could apply interpolation to anything that was just a single scalar floating point, always. And then we added things like interpolating of colors and a few other things in the base set with JavaFX 1.0. But we couldn't, up until now, interpolate a gradient, for example, or a border that defines a patterned line and a non-patterned line, or a border that might have 1 inch thick, not 1 inch, 1 millimeter thickness to 5 millimeter thickness. You'd like to be able to do some of those things. And so now what we did is we just applied the interpolatable interface to a whole number of things. And once doing that, the CSS transitions will just allow you to work. So the big ones are backgrounds and borders and the full set of image paints, JavaFX paints that we use, colors, gradients, and so on. Okay, so now I want to talk a bit about RichTextArea. So most applications want to display text. That tends to be something that is almost ubiquitous in a desktop application or a mobile application. And it's one thing to say, yeah, I'd like to display my text. Please make it black text with 24-point font of type Arial or whatever you're going to do. And the problem we have in JavaFX prior to now is that the text area and all of our text components only have a single style per node. And what that means is you're either stuck with using something like HTML editor that we provide and sits on top of WebKit, is very, very heavyweight. And it's also very limited because we provided sort of a built-in editor for that. And it only supports whatever we decided to put in. It's not extensible. And it's not suitable. You can't put 50 or 100 of HTML editors in your application. It would just fall over and die and wouldn't be what you want anyway. So the only solution people have today, since that's not suitable, is they write their own on top of TextFlow. And yeah, you can do that. But then you have to do everything. You get none of the things that we have in TextArea. You get no editing, you get no copy-paste, you get no scrolling, no highlighting, nothing. And so knowing that people want to write their applications with this, we decided it was important to provide at least a basic RichTextArea control. And so what we're not doing, just to be very clear, we are not providing a rich text editor. Don't think Microsoft Word or even WordPad or Apple's TextEdit. What we're instead doing is providing the way to do the visualization of that, and we're making it extensible and flexible enough so that you could write that on top of that with your own application. And I'll show a demo of a little simple toy that illustrates the concept of it. And it's available as a sample, but it's by no means a rich text editor app. It's a demo. Actually, before I go there, I did want to talk a little bit about, for those who are familiar with preview features in the JDK also supports something called incubator modules. That's for things that are perhaps not quite as fully baked as a preview feature would need to be, and can be factored out to sit in their own module. So we chose that approach because what we want to do is put this out, let application developers use it, and then gain feedback. Get the feedback from you, the application developer, so that we can evolve the API. And we didn't want to have to bake that API without the ability to make some changes in it. So incubating features, just like in the JDK, in JavaFX, incubating features can evolve incompatibly. So what that means is you, the app developer, need to opt into it and realize that JavaFX 24's API is probably going to be different from 25, probably going to be different from 26. So some of the things we support in RichTextArea, we support multiple data models. So rather than having, so TextArea just has a single data model, which is a plain text string stored as a single string in the control. What we do instead is we've separated out the data, which is in the model, from the control, which provides the view. And so the model holds the data, and we provide multiple different kinds of those. So for example, one obvious model is an in-memory editable rich text model. And so what that does is it stores a collection of paragraphs, each of which have a collection of text ranges with styles applied. We also have read-only models that will allow you to do very, very large database-driven models where you might not have the room. You could store 10 million, 100 million paragraphs, and you don't have memory for that on your machine, and you just get them on demand as you need. So it virtualizes the aspect of that, and I'll show a demo of that as well. And then it provides basic features like selection and highlighting, navigation and scrolling, copy-paste, keyboard shortcuts, the kind of thing we do in TextArea as well. We applied all of that to RichTextArea. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have in addition to regular editable text, we have a code area object, which gives you the ability to do syntax highlighting on text that, as you type it in, as you paste it, will apply a pluggable syntax highlighter to your code. And I'll demonstrate how that works. But think IDEs, when you type it in, your comments might be in one color, your text strings in another, your Java literals in a third color, and so on. And I'll show a little example of that. And in this example that I'm going to illustrate it in, this is an example of how you could integrate rich text into a notebook-style app. I'm not actually demonstrating a notebook app today, and I'll talk a little more about that later. But rather, we've got something that could be used to plug into any number of notebook-style apps. And the last thing I want to show as far as a demo, so I'll give you 3 demos of how to use rich text. The last one is the simplest one. But the idea behind this is I want to show how easy it is in code to use RichTextArea. So you could take your existing TextArea objects and with a very small amount of code, style the text segments however you like. And then we'll show some editing of that as well. And I'll show that in an IDE. So with that, we'll go ahead and run the demos. So the first demo, this is, like I said, is showing RichTextArea in its use in a notebook-style application. And so we have, in this demo app, which is typical of most notebook apps, we have 2 different types of cells. We have a text cell, which you would use for your documentation, and a regular rich text area would be perfect for that. So we didn't spend any time making an interesting editor, so I can do things like strikeout. I can't change the font or the color on this. I'll show you that in another app, but we just mainly wanted to show that the code area segment, which is what I've got next, but that we can integrate several different types of data. And this one is the more interesting one for the purposes of the notebook-style application. This is a code cell. And so you'll notice right away it does syntax highlighting. And so, I can keep typing hello. And it will highlight appropriately. This is not a real syntax highlighter either, but we'll show you a demo. You could actually go plug in your own. But what you do is you provide to code area, here is my syntax highlighter. Call me whenever you've got some new text that needs to be highlighted. And then you can iterate over just that piece, or you can iterate over the whole model if you have to, for example, compile it in order to know what the syntax of a certain element should be. And so now we're going to execute that. And that will show a third type of cell, which is an output cell, which isn't something we edit or run, but if we print that, it will do what you'd imagine. It prints out the results of that into a read-only cell and makes that available. And then there's just a few more examples I'll show. This one has a syntax error, so we're going to get an error. This displays not text, but an image. And so when I run that, it generates a cell that has an image. And this one we put inside a scroll bar so it doesn't take up full room. And same with this. This is a JavaFX list view, and it works just like a regular list view. And this last one demonstrates what I was talking about earlier with a read-only virtualized text model. So this one is going to generate, it's a sample. It doesn't really talk to a database, but in this application, it simulates what you might do, and it creates 10,000, or sorry, not 10,000, 10 million paragraphs. And so we don't want to hold all that in memory. So the first few are cached in memory, and then as I scroll, there we go. And if I jump, you'll see there's a little pause there. We're now at line 4 million. Now we're at line 10 million. And it will scroll them in or cache them in as it gets there. And the way that works is every time you scroll to a particular area, it will ask for a region viewable and a little before, a little after. And it'll ask the model, give me the data for line 7,999,000. And then for syntax highlighting, I'll just show very quickly a copy-paste of some code. And so you can see that as it copies it in, it pastes it. This isn't a real engine, so if I try to run this, even though that's syntactically correct, the script doesn't know what to do with that. So anyway, that's our notebook example as to how you would use RichTextArea in a notebook. And so now I'll show you the other example. This is a simple rich text editor demo. And so what we'll show here is the kinds of things you could do if you wanted to write your own rich text editor. This is a lot of things that we already do have available in HTML editor. The difference being, we'll provide you this as a sample. You instantiate a rich text area, and then you decide how you're going to provide the editing functions on that. There are a few things that you get just automatically because it's all you've done is plopped a rich text area in here. So I don't even have to provide any demo application to be able to edit and to type hello right there. Or to type hello right there and it'll be bold and italic. Or hello right there and it's smaller, larger, etc. That's all done by the rich text area component itself. Same thing with navigation, copy paste. So if I wanted to copy that and paste it, it'll do that. And there's an undo operation and various other things. So all that is just what RichTextArea gives you. So now for the editor, what this does is it plugs into various API calls inside of RichTextArea. And so I could decide I'm going to make that one bold. I could decide I'm going to add color, and you'll notice it'll do an overlapping style. So I'll just go to there, and I'm going to make that green. And you'll notice that everything that wasn't a color attribute, it just kept the existing attribute in there, and that's just handled automatically by the RichTextArea control and the model. So I think that's good enough for that. Yeah, we'll discard that. I don't really need to save it. So the last demo I want to show is how easy it is in code to add a rich text area to your application. So if you start with a simple text area, all that is, as I mentioned, it's a single string with a single color, a single font. Everything is the same. So we're going to define a few attributes. We'll define the text area width and height and the font size. We're going to use this same font size for both the rich text by default and the text area everywhere, because that's all we can do. And so for text area, all we do is create a font using the default font size. For rich text area, we're going to create a style called default style. And we're just going to create it using the font family and the size. And then we're going to derive from that a few other styles. So we'll create a bold style that starts with the default style, which is font size and family. And then we're going to make it bold. Similarly, we're going to make this one italic. And we're going to here start with the italic style and create red. And this one we're going to make a lime green bold style with a font that's half again as big as the default. And so the code needed to do this, well, TextArea, it's really easy. All you do is you set your text font on the control itself, because that's all you can do, and then we're going to append 4 lines of text. For the RichTextArea, it's the same thing. For the default styles, we just pass in the default style for those two. But what I'm showing now is we're having for each line after the first one, the left half is the default style, the right half is done using bold, italic, and color italic in that order. So I think I'll run this now, and then I'll get into the next one later. And so what you have is on top the plain text area, on bottom the rich text area. So this is a pretty simple app, but this also shows how easy it is to add. And this is editable, so I can go hello. This is also, and I decided I don't want to do that, so there. But in addition to adding a style when you create a text segment, you can apply it to the existing, and what it will do is merge with what's already there. So only the things that I'm changing in the style I'm applying will overwrite what's there. Anything that we haven't specified, it'll just take whatever was there. So what I'm going to do is, just to give you a heads up, it's going to do that much. So it's going to do from characters 2 through 10. 10 is exclusive. And it will apply the large color bold style. So it will be green, it will be bold, but those last 2 letters will stay italic. And so I'm going to click apply, and it'll do that. But before I do, all I have to do here is, I'm hard coding it. You obviously wouldn't do this in a real app, but I'm just saying on the last paragraph I want letters 2 through 10. And I'm going to apply that style. And so I press that, and it applies it. And so I can undo it. Or I can undo it with the keyboard. So, Command Z on a Mac is undo. And if I apply it and do this, it will remember, and same thing here. There. And so that's rich text. It shows how easy that is to use. So let me go back to the slides. So in conclusion on rich text, the key takeaway is RichTextArea is already there. It's ready to use. It's in JavaFX 24 GA. So if you go download it from jdk.java.net, it has rich text in there. It's in an incubator module, and you'll be able to use it and give us feedback. We really, really want your feedback. So as I mentioned, we have a train model just like the JDK, and just like the JDK, we are currently accumulating fixes in our main repo for JavaFX 25. JavaFX 25 will be built and tested on JDK 24 and later, and we'll test it with specifically JDK 24 and JDK 25. We recommend that you download an early access of both, and the GA will be sometime in September. JavaFX 25 has a few features, but with the exceptions of the ones that I've labeled as done, none of these are guaranteed to get into JavaFX 25. We hope most of them will make it. We're still early enough. We'll likely collect features until around the first or second week of July. And so that gives us a little bit of time to get these done. So we've done some improvements of performance on media on Windows platforms. In anticipation of our first preview feature, just like we put incubator features or incubator modules as a feature of the last release, we're doing preview features as a feature of this release. And that's in anticipation of getting JavaFX controls in the title bar. So most modern applications today have the ability to give you sort of a frameless, you don't necessarily have this big decorated title bar at the top of your application. You want to be able to customize that so that it looks like your application. And that's what this will allow us to do. And it's going to be a preview feature because it's a fairly large API surface. And we want the ability to be able to change that if we have to. There's a few text-related things inspired by our work on TextArea. We wanted to get public API for text layout and tab stop policy. And there's a continued effort that started in JavaFX 22, I think, to improve, fix bugs, get better support for right-to-left, bidirectional, and right-to-left characters. And then a couple of other features that we're looking at doing. And again, these might make 25, except for the first two, which are already in. And again, you can go download early access builds, and you can help contribute if there's something you'd like to see. The other thing that we're working on is new graphics pipelines. And we're doing that for the same reason pretty much on both platforms, and that's that the OpenGL API on Mac is old. And beyond that, Apple has deprecated it and said, please don't use it anymore. We will someday get rid of it. It's going to take them a while to do that. It's not going to go away today, but we know the writing's on the wall. So Java 2D implemented the Metal API a few releases ago, and so we're leveraging that work. We now have an early access that you can download, and you can give us feedback on that for the Metal API. And similarly on Windows, even though Microsoft has not deprecated it, they're also no longer improving DirectX 9. It is in deep maintenance mode at this point. So it's a legacy API, and we would like to move on to something more modern. And in fact, Direct3D12 is a natural choice because it's a very similar level. It's a much lower level API, just like Metal is. So OpenGL and Direct3D9 were a little higher level APIs where the driver was expected to do things for you, but then you had to rely on it doing things for you. And that means sometimes it doesn't make the best choices. And so the lower level APIs of Metal and Direct3D12 are what we're aiming for. We have a project in the JDK or JavaFX sandbox for Direct3D12, and we hope to go to early access soon. Other ongoing work, as always, fixing important bugs and platform support. Pretty much every time Apple or Ubuntu releases a new OS, we've got a lot of work to do. Occasionally with Microsoft, they tend to be a little friendlier with backward compatibility. And then we have various other things that we have to do all the time, which is updating our third-party libraries, fixing bugs, and we do a number of small enhancements as well. Oh, and of course we want to, as I mentioned earlier, gather feedback on rich text. Here are some little farther future ideas that we might do. The native Wayland work, at some point, X-Wayland may go away. I haven't heard any announced plans of that, but we know we want to be on native Wayland eventually. And so we don't have to release anything right away, but we'd like to get started soon. And the idea would be to leverage the work done on Project Wakefield. And then, here are some couple other ideas that I won't really talk much about. And similarly, these ideas have been there for a while, and a lot of it is going to be driven by what needs we see from our application developers and other priorities as well. But these are some things. And then, of course, we always are interested to know what you would like to see. So I guess the call to action I would have is JDK 24 and JavaFX 24 released today. What are you waiting for? Download it. Tell us what you like about it. And if you really want to be on the bleeding edge, download JavaFX 25 with JDK 25 early access and give that a spin. Kick the tires. And if you find a bug, you can report it at bugreport.java.com, and you can join our mailing list if you want to talk with the developers. And with that, we'll leave a few minutes. It looks like we have about 10 minutes for Q&A, so that will be good. And I'll just leave a list of links up there while we do that in case anybody wants to take a shot of that. And go ahead. Questions? Yes?
I guess beginners are interested in creating GUI apps. Mm-hmm. And I would like to see some of the things done for JavaFX that the on-ramp project is doing for Java. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yes,
I know the story.
I do. That would be a good idea. Oh yeah, repeating the question. That's right. Because do we have a microphone that could be passed around as well? To repeat the question, there's a number of good efforts going on with Project Amber for the paving the on-ramp. Can we help pave JavaFX's on-ramp? If I could, sort of paraphrase your question, yeah, that would be a really great thing. We showed a technology demo of some ideas of that with JavaFX Notebook. That's one way. And I think some of the ease of use utilities that they're doing for Project Amber, we could look at how we could fit into that a little bit better. So what are utilities we could do so people wouldn't have to have all this boilerplate would be good. What are some other things to make charting or UI controls or whatever easier to do? Yeah, we would like to do that. No concrete ideas right now, but tell us what you'd like.
The idea had crossed our minds.
Yes, that's very much.
There's a lot to install to get it started. There's just
Yeah, right. So there's sort of two aspects of that. One is the installation experience is anything but seamless, and I know I've been talking with Heather Stevens from the education side on that quite a bit. And then it's just once you have an installation and it's hooked up to your IDE, now what? Okay. Yes.
There's also the bug which prevents students from getting to JavaFX when you work from IntelliJ, having a main class and start the application, you have to wrap it in another main method to start it. This was introduced with the module system in Java.
I guess we could talk a little bit more about that. I wonder how much of that is the way IntelliJ chose to present it. Because if everything works with modules, you shouldn't need to do that.
Yeah, but that's usually often not the case. That's exactly the problem. That's the reality. For mixed reasons isn't there yet. And I run into these problems kind of all the time. And I think 90% of the developers also do. So it's a really huge problem, actually.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now that's good to know. I think the idea of a bundle that includes the JDK, JavaFX, the IDE plugins of choice might be a useful thing to help get around that, I would think. But maybe there are some other ideas and we could talk more. Yes?
There's also, for Mac, an
Oh, yeah.
incompatibility. Oh, yeah, this is nice. There's also in Mac an incompatibility with certain versions of Java. I had to
I guess I'd like to know more. Downgrading one for Mac. That's not usually our experience because usually we're working so hard to fix bugs that they introduce.
I had to go from one version of Java down to an earlier version of Java in order to get JavaFX to run on a Mac. And I don't remember the story. You're not familiar with it?
No,
so
I'm
maybe
definitely not familiar with that because everything I've shown here is JDK 24, JavaFX 24 in a bundle. So yeah, go ahead.
So I come here to ask you for some help because my current project is using Java Swing. So what can you do to help me convince my boss that we need to move to JavaFX?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure how good I would be at convincing your boss. Showing the productivity gains that you would have with that. I mean, it depends. If it's a application that's been running for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, going and rewriting that in JavaFX, that's going to be a hard sell for anybody. And if it was the other way around, it'd be the same thing.
So Swing going to be sunset anytime soon, or the timeline?
No time soon.
Okay.
Phil could even answer that question, but there are zero plans to do that. Do you want to say more than there are zero plans to do that? No, Phil's right there if you want to give it to him. Oh, that's all right.
There are 0 plans.
Yeah, in other words, that's a fine answer.
Oh, yeah.
Hi.
I teach Java, and in my intermediate Java, I'm still teaching Swing. Is there any materials available that could help me switch to teaching JavaFX?
That's an area we're a little weak on as well. So there are some old tutorials that will get you started, but sadly,
But even
no.
old ones, where could I find those?
If you look on Oracle's docs for JavaFX tutorials, there will be a few.
So maybe I should wait until you have better support for that? Is it? I don't know.
I mean, if you
Okay.
really need some materials for that, yes, or somebody else is going to have to develop them.
Right. Okay.
That's something we don't have.
Tutorials for you to read, or are you looking
For me to
something-
include in my
That's
class.
what I was kind of getting to.
That's a very
Kind of
different
the
thing, yeah.
Stevens conversation possibly.
Yes, that's actually a good point.
Right, to help me teach.
Yes.
I see. Yeah, thanks for the
Others are very
clarification.
focused on the educational market, so.
Right.
Yeah, she is. No, you're right. Thanks for the catching that subtlety. Yes.
Yeah, on the distribution of the official version of JavaFX, when it comes to JDK vendors, there seems to be a lot of variation in terms of what they bundle for codecs, particularly video. I'm thinking video codec support, because, right, patent issues or, you know, I mean, Adoptium is never going to want to carry H.265 or so, whatever patent issues. Is there any way to have, I don't know how to describe, some kind of consistency in terms of at least reporting and saying this is what the video codecs that this distribution will support for this JavaFX? Or I mean, is there officially what you guys as the core team?
We do have a list. Yeah, so in our API docs, we do list the codecs that are
The official,
available.
yeah.
But even then, if you're downloading an Oracle JDK or anybody else's, if you don't have the Microsoft support for some
Well,
of this, you have to download this like 99-cent thing that Microsoft makes you,
Yeah.
that they used
Yeah,
to
and if
bundle with
you're on
Windows
Linux
10 and
or,
they don't
yeah,
for
if
Windows
you're on
11.
Adoptium and Linux, you might not
then
have any of
Linux,
that,
yeah.
right? So, I mean, that's one of the concerns is like.
No, that's a fair
but,
point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's any easy way around that. Probably not, because the patents aren't going to.
Probably not because of the patent issues. Yeah,
Okay, I just wanted to bring that up. but
Sure.
it's-
I think there was a question back here.
My experience has been with mostly Java 17. Sorry, I'm a little slow. But
At least you didn't say Java 8.
yeah, well, I got that too. But the one thing I was wondering, there's that tool, I think it was developed by a third party for the layout editor.
You're talking about Scene Builder?
Yeah.
It was originally developed at Oracle, and we've since open sourced it, and Gluon is maintaining it.
Gluon's maintaining it. Yeah, that's what I
Right.
saw. So that's being updated as well. Is that correct?
As far as I know, yes, they are updating it. But,
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, that's just what I wanted to know.
Is it possible to use JavaFX for web in replacement of a front-end framework?
Yes, you could certainly do that. It depends on what your needs are, though. So we do provide a web view component. So you're welcome to try it out and see if it works.
Okay, thank you.
Is this presentation available somewhere?
Oh, yeah, thank you. I actually meant to mention that earlier. I will, not right now, but it will be at the end of the conference. I will post it on cr.openjdk.org. And I probably should have put a pointer to that here. So I'll tell you what, I will put a pointer to the slides before I post them. That won't help. No, what I will do seriously is I will announce it on the OpenJFX dev mailing list when I do that.
I have a question. So
Yes.
You mentioned like Wayland and
Yeah.
DirectX and OpenGL and all that code that's very low level and really hard code. Like
Right,
I've
that's why
looked
we
at-
don't expect our JavaFX app
Yeah.
developers to
So,
touch it.
but who does maintain that? Who's developing that code? Because it's not easy. It's like almost
we are.
rocket science.
Yeah.
And you are Oracle.
Yeah.
Okay, so not just Gluon. It's Oracle still.
It's primarily
writing
Oracle
JavaFX
doing that
code.
part of it, yes.
Okay, cool.
Oh, yeah, please. I think we have. Yeah, we
Yeah,
still
actually, I
have
had a
about 1
question
minute.
about your rich text area.
Okay. Sure.
Do you guys have compatibility when you like copy and paste between other non-JavaFX applications?
Yeah, to a certain degree, yes. We do have importers and exporters, so we'll go, like I think we export to HTML. We will both import and export from RTF.
Okay.
There's work is still in progress with those, but yeah, and in fact, there just some bugs were fixed very recently in 25. So if you're really interested in rich text and RTF compatibility, I would get an early access of 25
Awesome.
because they've already fixed some bugs.
Yeah. Just want to make sure you were thinking about that. That's
We
awesome.
are. Yeah, because we have a native format for copying and pasting between two rich text areas or two JavaFX apps, but we will export and put various formats on the board for that.
Awesome. Great.
Okay, maybe one more question I think we have time for.
Sure. So I've got a question about the CSS transitions you showcased earlier.
Yeah.
First of all, looks really cool. Awesome. But what I'm wondering is how much control do we as developers have over those transitions? Because from what I could tell, for example, we've got like 100 pixel width going to a 300 pixel width in 4 seconds. That's like 50 pixels of width each second. What if we want to change the speed? Like
Yes,
how much
we-
control do we have over that?
All the control that CSS animations give you, they allow you to define the transition function. So you basically define a function that determines how time gets mapped to an alpha, and then that will get interpolated to that degree. It's very rich, so you can go look at the documentation for JavaFX 23 or 24 now.
All right, thank you.
And it has a very good description. The guy that did that really spent a lot of time on the docs. So
Yes, you can do it, and you just had a simple example.
I did very, very simple. I didn't want to talk about the transitions, but happy to show you at some point. All right. Okay, well, thank you, everybody.